Tsunamis. The word itself evokes awe and fear. Derived from the Japanese words tsu, harbor, and nami, wave. A tsunami is not just a wave, but a force of nature capable of reshaping coastlines, destroying cities, and altering the course of history in minutes. Unlike regular ocean waves formed by wind, tsunamis are caused by massive disturbances of water, often from undersea earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, or landslides. When the seafloor abruptly deforms and displaces the overlying water, that displacement creates waves that radiate outward at jetliner speeds, up to 800 kilometers per hour in deep water. To a sailor far out at sea, a tsunami may pass unnoticed. But as the wave approaches land and the water becomes shallower, it rises, growing into a monstrous wall, sometimes over 100 feet tall, and crashes on a shore with unimaginable power. Throughout history, tsunamis have struck without warning, wiping out entire civilizations. The earliest records go back thousands of years, often passed down through myths and oral traditions. It wasn't until the modern era, with the advent of seismographs and satellite imaging, that humanity began to understand their causes and patterns. Though even today, prediction remains a difficult challenge. This is the story of the world's most catastrophic tsunamis, natural disasters that changed nations, affected millions of lives, and taught scientists painful but vital lessons about the ocean's fury. From ancient volcanic cataclysms to modern megaquakes, each chapter in this saga is a reminder of Earth's raw power and our fragile place upon it. The 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami, the day the sea rose. December 26, 2004, a day the world will never forget. It began with a rumble beneath the Indian Ocean, a violent shudder of the Earth's crust that lasted nearly 10 minutes. It was 7:58 a.m. local time, and most people across Southeast Asia were just beginning their day. But deep beneath the sea, two massive tectonic plates, the Indian plate and the Burma plate, had collided in a titanic struggle, releasing the energy of 23,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs. The result was a magnitude 9.1 to 9.3 earthquake, one of the most powerful ever recorded. But the shaking itself was just the beginning. In the minutes that followed, walls of water began racing outward in every direction. Entire masses of seawater, billions of tons, have been displaced, creating a deadly series of tsunami waves that move like liquid missiles. Some travel over 500 miles per hour, fast enough to cross the entire Indian Ocean in mere hours. And on the shores of Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, and even as far as the east coast of Africa, death was on its way. Indonesia, ground zero, the province of Aceh at the northern tip of Sumatra, was closest to the epicenter. Just 15 minutes after the quake, waves estimated to be up to 30 meters, 100 feet, tall, crashed into the coast. Fishing villages were instantly erased. Concrete buildings crumbled like sandcastles. Entire families were swept into the sea without warning. In Banda Aceh, once a bustling town, the tsunami left behind only chaos and silence. Survivors described hearing a loud roaring sound, like 100 trains, before being engulfed in dark, debris-filled water. More than 170,000 people in Indonesia alone were killed. Thailand, paradise turned nightmare. Tourists basking on the beaches of Phuket and Khao Lak were some of the next to feel the tsunami's wrath. The first sign was strange. The sea suddenly receded, exposing coral and fish on the sand. Curious visitors wandered out to take pictures, unaware that the water's withdrawal was a tsunami's deadly warning sign. Within minutes, the waves returned not gently but violently. Video footage later emerged of monstrous waves crashing through hotel lobbies, sweeping away cars, boats, and people in an unstoppable flood of destruction. In Thailand, more than 5,000 lives were lost, including many foreign tourists, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in modern tourism history. Sri Lanka and India, no time to escape. Further west, the tsunami struck the eastern coast of Sri Lanka and India. By the time it arrived, about 90 minutes after quake, it still held immense power. In Sri Lanka, the waves traveled up rivers and canals, hitting areas deep inland. A passenger train traveling along the coast, called the Queen of the Sea, was hit and overturned by the tsunami. Over 1,700 people aboard were killed, making it the deadliest rail disaster in history. In India's Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh states, thousands were swept away. Entire fishing communities vanished. And on the remote Andaman and Nicobar Islands, help wouldn't arrive for days. Somalia in Africa, a wave across oceans, more than 8 hours after the earthquake. The tsunami reached the coast of Somalia, over 4,500 kilometers away. The wave still had enough force to destroy coastal villages and kill nearly 300 people. Other African nations, including Kenya, Tanzania, and Seychelles, also reported deaths and severe damage. The Indian Ocean tsunami had become a truly global disaster. Global impact, a wake-up call. By the time the sea calmed, over 230,000 people in 14 countries were confirmed dead or missing. More than 1.7 million people were displaced. It was the deadliest tsunami in recorded history, and one of the worst natural disasters of any kind in modern times. But the tragedy also sparked a massive global humanitarian response. Countries around the world sent rescue teams, aid supplies, and billions in donations. The UN called it the largest relief effort in history. Celebrities hosted telethons. Entire towns were rebuilt from scratch. In the years that followed, the Indian Ocean region developed its first ever tsunami warning system, something that had not existed before 2004. Buoys, satellites, and seismic sensors now track earthquake activity to give countries precious minutes to evacuate. Stories of survival and heroism amid the horror. Stories of miraculous survival and human courage emerged. A 10-year-old British girl named Tilly Smith saved her family and dozens of others in Phuket by recognizing the signs of an incoming tsunami. Thanks to a geography lesson she had just learned in school, a man in Sri Lanka clung to a tree for hours as the water rushed past him. He later helped rescue several children trapped in debris. In Banda Aceh, some survivors were carried several kilometers inland by the wave, only to wake up later in rice fields, miraculously alive. These stories became symbols of hope, evidence that even against such forces of nature, the human spirit could endure. Lessons learned. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami changed the world. It reminded us that Earth's tectonic movements, though hidden, can explode with apocalyptic force. It showed that early warning systems are not a luxury, but a necessity, and it proved that in the aftermath of unspeakable tragedy, nations and people can unite in compassion. It also revealed how unprepared the world had been. There were no alarms, no sirens, and little understanding of tsunami behavior across the Indian Ocean before that day. But never again. The world vowed not to forget. The 2011 Tohoku tsunami, the day Japan stood still. March 11, 2011, a cataclysmic convergence. At precisely 2:46 p.m. Japan Standard Time on a quiet Friday afternoon, the ground beneath the northeastern coast of Japan began to shake violently. Offices trembled. Skyscrapers in Tokyo swayed like trees in a storm. Across the country, phones buzzed with early earthquake alerts. But few could imagine the scale of what was about to unfold. The magnitude 9.0 undersea megathrust earthquake, centered off the coast of Tohoku, was the most powerful ever recorded in Japan, and the fourth most powerful in the world since record began. It struck beneath the Pacific Ocean, triggering a chain reaction that would lead to one of the most devastating tsunamis in modern history, and a nuclear disaster that would shake global confidence in atomic energy. The earthquake that moved the nation. The quake lasted over 6 minutes, shifting the island of Honshu by more than 2.4 meters 8 feet, and moving the Earth's axis by an estimated 10 to 25 centimeters. Roads cracked open, landslides erupted, trains screeched to a halt, and beneath the sea, the ocean floor itself had moved, displacing massive volumes of water. Within 30 minutes, the first wave struck Japan's coast. But it was just the beginning. The tsunami hits, walls of water, a massive tsunami, with waves reaching up to 40.5 meters, 133 feet, high, thundered ashore, sweeping away everything in its path. Entire towns, cars, ships, and buildings were obliterated. The sea surged up rivers, over levees, and deep into farmland and cities. The water traveled as far as 10 kilometers, 6 miles, inland in some areas. The prefectures of Miyagi, Aiwei, and Fukushima were the hardest hit. In the coastal town of Minamisamriku, over 95% of the buildings were destroyed, and more than half the population was lost or displaced. Terrifying live footage showed waves swallowing homes and cars in real time. A ship was thrown onto a rooftop. A whirlpool formed in Ori Harbor, sucking in debris. The images shocked the world. The death toll and damage. In total, the disaster left over 19,000 people dead or missing, with more than 2,500 bodies never recovered. Over 2.5 million tons of debris were swept into the ocean, some of which eventually washed up on the shores of North America years later. Nearly 500,000 people were displaced, and entire towns, including Rikuzen Takeda and Kesanuma, were effectively erased from the map. The economic cost of the disaster was astronomical, estimated at over $235 billion, making it the most expensive natural disaster in history. Fukushima, the nuclear crisis. The tsunami didn't stop with physical destruction. At the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, the incoming waves breached sea walls and flooded the backup generators that powered the cooling systems of 3 reactors. Without cooling, the reactors began to overheat. Hydrogen explosions ripped apart buildings. Radiation leaked into the air and ocean. A 20-kilometer exclusion zone was established, and over 160,000 residents were evacuated, some never to return. The incident became the worst nuclear accident since Chernobyl in 1986 and reignited global debates over nuclear safety. Heroes in the face of horror. Despite the overwhelming destruction, Japan's emergency response was swift and disciplined. Self-defense forces, firefighters, and civilian volunteers braved aftershocks, radiation, and frigid temperatures to rescue survivors and recover bodies. Many people risked their lives to save others. A schoolteacher in Kamaishi led dozens of children to high ground, saving them from certain death. The Fukushima 50, a group of plant workers and engineers, stayed behind to cool the reactors manually, preventing a full nuclear meltdown. Volunteers from across Japan poured in to help rebuild towns, deliver aid, and comfort the grieving. These stories of courage and unity inspire the world. International support and recovery, aid came swiftly from around the world. The U.S. launched Operation Tomodachi, meaning friend in Japanese, deploying military personnel, ships, and aircraft to deliver supplies and aid. Rescue teams from over 20 countries arrived within days. Japan, a country known for resilience, began to rebuild almost immediately. Within weeks, temporary housing units sprang up, roads were repaired, rail lines were restored, and plans were drawn up to redesign coastal defenses with taller seawalls and smarter evacuation zones. By 2016, many of the destroyed areas were partially rebuilt, but the emotional scars remained. Many survivors, especially children, carried lasting trauma. Annual memorials became national events, with silent moments observed at exactly 2:46 p.m. Scientific lessons. The 2011 tsunami challenged everything scientists thought they knew about subduction zone quakes. The rupture extended over 500 kilometers, 310 miles, and produced tsunami waves larger than models had predicted. Japan's sophisticated early warning system had given people seconds to minutes of notice, but in some cases, it wasn't enough. The disaster emphasized the importance of evacuation culture, teaching people to run for high ground at the first sign of danger rather than waiting for alerts. After the tsunami, the Japanese Meteorological Agency revised its warning system, and schools across the country began annual tsunami drills. A global impact. The Tohoku disaster reshaped global policies on natural disaster preparedness. Tsunami warning systems in the Pacific and other regions were upgraded. Nuclear power plants around the world underwent rigorous safety reviews. Urban planning near coastlines was reconsidered in light of new data. Even popular culture reflected the impact. Documentaries, films, and memoirs captured the tragedy and human strength behind the headlines. Survivors published stories of loss and endurance, helping the world understand the scale of what they endured. A nation reborn. Today, Japan continues to rebuild the communities destroyed in 2011. Seawalls up to 15 meters tall line many parts of the coast. Memorial parks and museums honor the lives lost. And renewable energy efforts have replaced much of the nuclear power infrastructure. Those scars remain, both visible and emotional. The legacy of the 2011 tsunami is one of resilience, remembrance, and renewal. The sea took much from Japan that day, but it could not erase its spirit. The 1755 Lisbon tsunami. The earth shook Europe's faith. November 1st, 1755, All Saints' Day. It was a bright and peaceful morning in Lisbon, Portugal, one of the wealthiest and most vibrant cities in Europe. As thousands of worshippers packed the capital's churches for All Saints' Day, few suspected that a catastrophe was only moments away. At approximately 9:40 a.m., the earth began to tremble, first gently, then violently. Buildings swayed. Chandeliers crashed from ceilings. In just a few minutes, much of Lisbon had been reduced to rubble. The ground split open. Fires ignited across the city. The Great Lisbon Earthquake, estimated at magnitude 8.5 to 9.0, had struck without warning. But this was only the beginning. The ocean's retreat. Roughly 40 minutes after the initial quake, a strange phenomenon occurred. The Tagus River receded dramatically. The waters of the harbor pulled back, revealing shipwrecks, muddy riverbeds, and fish flopping on the sand. People rushed to the waterfront, unaware that what they were witnessing was a textbook warning sign of a tsunami. Then, like the fury of an angry god, the water returned, not gently, but as a roaring roar. Eyewitness accounts describe a wave up to 20 meters, 65 feet, tall, smashing into the shore. Ships anchored in the harbor were tossed into the city. The tsunami engulfed Lisbon's lower districts, including the royal palace, marketplaces, and the commercial heart of the city. Destruction and chaos. The combination of earthquake, tsunami, and the fires that followed caused near-apocalyptic destruction. The earthquake had already razed thousands of buildings. The tsunami drowned countless survivors. And the fires, fueled by shattered oil lamps, toppled stoves, and flammable debris, raged for 5 days, consuming what the waves had left behind. Lisbon, once a gleaming center of the Enlightenment and maritime power, was left in ruin. Of the city's estimated 275,000 inhabitants, at least 60,000 to 90,000 people died, though some estimates go even higher. Entire families were lost, buried beneath rubble, burned in the fires, or swept out to sea. Far-reaching impact. The tsunami wasn't limited to Portugal. It spread throughout the Atlantic Ocean, causing destruction in southern Spain. Cadiz and Huelva were badly hit. Morocco. Thousands were killed as coastal towns fled. Ireland and England. Unusual sea level changes were recorded. Caribbean and Brazil. The tsunami was observed thousands of miles away. It was one of the earliest recorded transoceanic tsunamis, proving how far-reaching these waves could travel. A blow to faith and philosophy. What made the 1755 Lisbon tsunami particularly devastating wasn't just the physical damage. It was a psychological shock. The disaster struck on a holy day, in churches filled with worshipers. Many survivors asked, why would God destroy his own house? This question shook Europe to its core. In France, the philosopher Voltaire used the tragedy to question blind religious faith. His famous work, Candide, included scenes mocking the idea that all is the best in the best of all possible worlds. Meanwhile, theologians, scientists, and politicians argued over the meaning of the event. Was it divine punishment, a random act of nature, or a failure of human preparedness? This intellectual fallout helped trigger the Age of Enlightenment, during which reason and science began to challenge the dominance of the church across Europe. Birth of seismology and disaster science. The 1755 Lisbon earthquake and tsunami were also among the first natural disasters to be studied scientifically. Portugal's Prime Minister, Marquis of Pombal, famously said, "What now? We bury the dead and feed the living." But he did more than that. Pombal sent questionnaires to parishes throughout Portugal, asking about the shaking, the sea's behavior, the timing of events, and the extent of damage. This information was collected and analyzed, laying the groundwork for modern seismology. He also implemented one of the earliest forms of earthquake-resistant construction. The rebuilt city of Lisbon featured wide streets, open squares to prevent fire spread, and specially designed wooden frame buildings called Pommeline structures that could better withstand future quakes. Cultural memory and artistic legacy. The disaster left a deep scar on European art and literature. Painters depicted the event in dramatic scenes. Writers reflected on the impermanence of life and the wrath of nature. Philosophers like Immanuel Kant wrote essays on the natural causes of earthquakes, marking an important shift towards scientific explanations over theological ones. The 1755 disaster remains a central theme in discussions of how societies interpret and recover from catastrophe. A nation rebuilt. Though Lisbon was devastated, it was not defeated. Under Pombal's leadership, the city was rebuilt stronger and smarter. Trade resumed. Culture flourished. But the memory of that fateful day, the trembling ground, the roaring sea, the walls of fire, was never forgotten. Even today, in Portuguese history and consciousness, the 1755 earthquake and tsunami stand as a symbol of resilience, rebirth, an enduring power human will in the face of natural fury. The 1883 Krakatoa tsunami. The sky turned black. August 26 to 27, 1883. The mountain that exploded. In the narrow strait between the Indonesian islands of Java and Sumatra, a small volcanic island known as Krakatoa had been rumbling for months. Local fishermen reported strange sounds. Columns of smoke rose from its crater. Birds fled its slopes. But few realized they were witnessing the prelude to one of the most violent volcanic events in recorded history. On the morning of August 26, 1883, Krakatoa began to erupt. What followed over the next 36 hours would unleash a chain reaction of destruction, a massive eruption, collapsing calderas, and most deadly of all, a series of giant tsunamis that would wipe out entire coastal communities. A blast heard around the world. At 10:02 a.m. on August 27th, Krakatoa exploded with force so massive that it is still considered one of the loudest sounds ever heard on Earth. The blast was audible as far away as Australia, 3,000 kilometers, and even on Rodriguez Island in the Indian Ocean, over 4,800 kilometers, 3,000 miles away. The eruption generated a shockwave that traveled the globe 7 times. Over 2/3 of the island was instantly destroyed as the volcano collapsed into the sea, creating a massive displacement of water that birthed towering tsunamis. These waves were not like ordinary tsunami ripples. They were devastating surges of water reaching 30 to 40 meters, 100 to 130 feet in height. The tsunamis strike. The first wave struck within minutes. On the coast of Java, towns like Anjer and Merak were annihilated. Some entire villages were reduced to mud and debris, and tens of thousands were drowned. On Sumatra, the water surged inland, destroying everything in its path. Rivers reversed course. Ships were carried far into the jungle and deposited in trees. A Dutch naval ship, the Berouw, was lifted and hurled nearly 3 kilometers inland with its entire crew killed. In Batavia, modern-day Jakarta, over 100 miles away, sea levels rose and buildings shook. More than 36,000 people were officially recorded as killed, mostly by the tsunamis. But modern estimates suggest the true toll may have exceeded 100,000 due to unreported deaths in remote coastal areas. A darkness fell upon the earth. The eruption released over 20 cubic kilometers of rock, ash, and debris into the atmosphere. The volcanic ash clouds circled the planet, blocking sunlight, and causing global temperatures to drop by 1.2 degrees Celsius, 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit for over a year. Sunset around the world became blood red, famously inspiring painters like Edvard Munch, who later created The Scream, and writers like Alfred Tennyson, who described the eerie twilight in poetry. The sky turned black across Java and Sumatra for days, with ashfall blanketing homes and fields. People thought the end of the world had come. The birth of Krakatoa. After the explosion, Krakatoa itself was gone, mostly submerged beneath the sea. But in 1927, a new volcanic island began to emerge in the caldera, Krakatoa, meaning child of Krakatoa. It is still active today and serves as a living reminder of the island's deadly past. In 2018, Krakatoa partially collapsed again, triggering a deadly tsunami that killed more than 400 people, proving that even a child could still be a threat. A new era of volcanic science. The 1883 Krakatoa eruption and tsunami mark a turning point in global understanding of volcanoes and tsunamis. For the first time, scientists were able to use telegraph lines and barometers to record the blast shockwaves and pressure changes around the world. It was also among the first disasters widely covered by newspapers, creating a global media sensation. The eruption helped expand early theories of volcano-atmosphere interaction, climate change, and tsunami behavior. The disaster ultimately led to more organized efforts in volcanology, seismology, and oceanographic studies, especially in colonial Southeast Asia. Myths, memory, and legacy. For centuries, the people of Indonesia have passed down oral legends of Krakatoa. Some describe gods fighting beneath the sea, or the sea swallowing the land in punishment. These tales, once seen as folklore, are now recognized as historical memory passed through generations. Krakatoa also entered global culture, inspiring books, documentaries, and films like Krakatoa, East of Java, but no dramatization can truly capture the scale of the disaster. Even now, volcanic and tsunami warning systems in Indonesia are regularly tested, with special focus on Sunda Strait, the site of Krakatoa's fury. A warning from the deep. The 1883 Krakatoa tsunami stands as a terrifying lesson. Volcanoes and tsunamis are not separate dangers. They can occur together in catastrophic ways. Today, with more than 260 million people living in Indonesia, many near coastlines and active volcanoes, the legacy of Krakatoa is not just a story from the past. It is a warning, a reminder that Earth's power, when released suddenly, can erase cities, rewrite coastlines, and change the world in a matter of hours. The 1960 Valdivia earthquake and Chile tsunami, the longest quake, the longest reach. May 22nd, 1960, the ground that wouldn't stop shaking. At exactly 3:11 p.m. local time, the earth beneath southern Chile began to convulse. This was not an ordinary earthquake. What began as a violent tremor soon turned into a nightmarish 10-minute ordeal. It was as if the earth itself had cracked open. Mountains groaned, buildings buckled, and the sea began to pull away from the coast. What Chile experienced that day was the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in human history, a magnitude 9.5 megathrust event known as the Great Chilean Earthquake or the 1960 Valdivia Earthquake. It would set off a series of deadly tsunamis that traveled across the entire Pacific Ocean, killing hundreds of people thousands of kilometers away. From Hawaii to Japan to the Philippines, a nation in ruins. The quake struck along a 1,000-kilometer fault line, rupturing the boundary between the Nazca Plate and the South American Plate. It released more than 2,000 times the energy of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. In cities like Valdivia, Puerto Montt, and Concepcion, entire neighborhoods collapsed. Rivers changed course. Landslides buried towns. Bridges fell. Fires broke out. More than 2 million people were affected. In some areas, the ground dropped over 2 meters, while in others, it rose by more than 6 meters. The land itself was resculpted by seismic power. But as survivors began emerging from the rubble, a new threat loomed on the horizon. The sea strikes back. Roughly 15 minutes after quake, the ocean began to behave strangely along Chile's coast. In Puerto Saavedra and Corral, the sea receded. The classic warning sign of incoming tsunami. Then came the waves. Towering surges as high as 25 meters, 82 feet, crashed into the coastline, destroying coastal towns and fishing villages. In some cases, the water traveled several kilometers inland, dragging homes, trees, and people out to sea. The tsunami compounded the destruction caused by the quake. Entire communities that had survived the shaking were now erased by the waves. Hawaii, Japan, and the Pacific Basin. The wave travels, but the Valdivia tsunami did not stop at Chile's shores. The massive undersea disturbance triggered a wave that raced across the Pacific Ocean at over 700 kilometers per hour, 435 miles per hour. As it spread, it lost little strength. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issued alerts. But this was 1960 and communication was slow. Many coastal communities didn't take the warning seriously or didn't receive them in time. Hilo, Hawaii was struck about 15 hours later on May 23rd. A 10.7 meter, 35-foot wave barreled into the city, destroying hundreds of buildings and killing 61 people. Next came Japan. More than 22 hours after the earthquake, tsunami waves, some over 6 meters, 20 feet high, struck the country's northeastern coast. killing 138 people, injuring hundreds, and damaging thousands of buildings. The Philippines, New Zealand, Alaska, and even California felt the tsunami's force. Boats were tossed, harbors flooded, and coastlines battered. In total, the tsunami claimed more than 230 lives outside of Chile, in addition to the 1,000 to 6,000 killed within Chile itself. Estimates vary due to limited reporting in rural areas. A second catastrophe, Volcano, as if the earthquake and tsunami weren't enough. The quake destabilized the Puey-Cordon-Col volcanic complex, located hundreds of kilometers inland. 2 days later, on May 24th, the volcano erupted, launching ash more than 6,000 meters into the sky. Ash rained down across southern Chile and Argentina. Roads were closed. Crops were ruined. Air travel ceased. In a matter of days, Chile had suffered a triple catastrophe. The strongest quake in history, a trans-Pacific tsunami, and a major volcanic eruption. The science and legacy. The 1960 Valdivia earthquake profoundly impacted the scientific understanding of plate tectonics and subduction zones. It helped confirm theories about how the Earth's plates interact and how massive stress builds up and is released through seismic activity. It also demonstrated the urgent need for better tsunami warning systems. As a result, international cooperation around tsunami monitoring dramatically increased. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center in Hawaii improved its communication systems. Seismic and oceanic data sharing among nations became more common. The event also inspired the creation of the International Tsunami Information Center in 1965. And by the 1970s, tsunami drills and education became part of life in vulnerable regions. Human resilience, despite the devastation. The people of Chile showed remarkable strength. In the days that followed, citizens banded together to pull survivors from rubble, deliver food, and build shelters. Aid flowed in from around the world. The Chilean government quickly passed legislation to rebuild cities and improve construction standards, particularly in quake-prone zones. Valdivia, the hardest-hit city, was reconstructed, but reminders of the disaster remained. Sunken land, ruins of old buildings, and stories passed down from generation to generation. The long reach of a sudden event. The 1960 Chilean tsunami demonstrated a terrifying truth. A single geological event can shake the entire planet. A rupture under the sea in one corner of the world sent deadly waves across an ocean, killing people on distant shores and uniting humanity in grief and response. To this day, the 1960 Valdivia earthquake remains the largest ever recorded, a benchmark by which all others are measured, and a reminder that even with modern technology, nature can still surprise us with immense, unpredictable power. The 1958 Lituya Bay mega tsunami, the tallest wave in history. July 9, 1958, a night of unimaginable force. On a warm summer night in Lituya Bay, a remote fjord along the rugged coast of southeastern Alaska, the earth shook. At 10:15 p.m., a magnitude 7.8 earthquake rocked the Fairweather Fault, triggering a natural event so violent, it defied belief. Within seconds, a massive chunk of rock and ice, the size of a city block, broke loose from the mountainside and plummeted into the narrow inlet of Lituya Bay. The force of the impact displaced an enormous volume of water. What followed was not an ordinary tsunami. It was the largest wave ever recorded on Earth. A mega tsunami that stripped hillsides, snapped giant trees like twigs, and reached an astonishing height of 1,720 feet, 524 meters, above sea level. To put that into perspective, the wave was taller than the Empire State Building, the Eiffel Tower, and nearly as high as the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. Lituya Bay, nature's deadly trap. Lituya Bay is a unique geological structure, a narrow fjord 7 miles long, flanked by steep mountain walls and 2 glaciers. It connects to the Gulf of Alaska through a tight, shallow entrance, making a perfect location for massive water displacement, and a dangerous trap when disaster strikes. On that July night, as the earthquake hit, a landslide of 30 million cubic meters of rock fell from Lituya Mountain into the bay's Gilbert Inlet. The result was cataclysmic. The impact created a supercharged surge of water that shot outward with unimaginable speed. The wave raced across the bay, uprooting everything in its path and scouring the mountainside's bare vegetation. Survivor stories. Incredibly, there were witnesses. 3 fishing boats were anchored in the bay that night. 2 of them would face the wrath of the wave. Howard Ulrich and his 8-year-old son, Sonny, were aboard their boat near the mouth of the bay. They saw the mountain collapse and felt the air pressure change. Before they could react, a wall of water came surging toward them. Miraculously, their boat rode the wave, lifted up like a toy, and survived the surge. They were tossed around violently, but lived to tell the tale. Bill and Vivian Swanson, aboard another boat, weren't as lucky. Their vessel was destroyed, and they were killed instantly. Their remains never recovered. A third boat farther from the center of impact also managed to escape with its crew intact. What Ulrich described was unprecedented. He recalled, "It looked as if the whole side of the mountain had slid into the bay. Then the wave came. I saw trees, logs, and ice crashing down like a waterfall of debris. Scars on the land. The evidence left behind by the wave was undeniable. Trees were stripped from the land up to 1,720 feet high along the slope of Lituya Mountain. Forests that stood for centuries were obliterated. The shoreline was reshaped, and massive logs floated in the water for months afterward. Scientific expeditions later measured the high water mark, confirming the height of the mega tsunami and forever etching it into geological history. Why was the wave so big? The 1958 Lituya Bay wave wasn't caused by a traditional earthquake-induced tsunami. Instead, it was a result of a massive rockfall impacting confined water, a perfect combination of geography and timing. The narrow, steep-walled bay allowed the displaced water to surge upward and outward in a focused manner. Think of dropping a boulder into a full bathtub. Then imagine the boulder is the size of a skyscraper, and the bathtub is 7 miles long. This mechanism, known as a displacement wave, can, under certain conditions, create waves much taller than those generated by tectonic plate shifts under the sea. That's why the Lituya Bay wave stands apart. It wasn't a classic tsunami, but it was just as deadly and far more dramatic. Scientific importance. The Lituya Bay event has become a critical case study for geologists and tsunami researchers. It demonstrated that landslide-generated waves can far exceed typical tsunami heights, and that megatsunamis are real phenomena, not myths. It also raised awareness about similar risks in other parts of the world where steep slopes overlook bodies of water, especially in earthquake-prone regions. Lituya Bay is now a natural laboratory, often cited in textbooks and scientific journals. Researchers continue to monitor similar fjords and glacial valleys for signs of potential future megatsunami threats. The bay today, Lituya Bay appears peaceful. Its glassy waters reflect snowy peaks. The scarred mountainsides have slowly regrown trees. But for those who know its history, the bay holds a haunting legacy. Boaters still enter the bay cautiously. Locals speak of the wave that scraped the sky. Tourists visit by plane or boat, and researchers return year after year to measure the landscape and learn from past. While it remains remote, Lituya Bay is now world famous, not for its beauty, but for its terrifying reminder that even small places can produce the biggest waves on Earth. Ancient tsunamis, the Thera eruption, and lost civilizations. Long before satellite sensors and seismic records, the world's oceans unleashed a fury on ancient civilizations. And the stories of these cataclysms were passed down through legends, ruins, and forgotten texts. Among the most mysterious and devastating ancient tsunamis is the one linked to the eruption of Thera, a volcanic island in the Aegean Sea. This event not only shaped geography, but may have altered the course of human history. The island of Thera, modern-day Santorini. Around 1600 BCE, the island of Thera, now called Santorini, was home to a thriving civilization. The Minoans, centered on the island of Crete, had built a powerful maritime empire. Thera was one of the most beautiful and prosperous outposts, filled with multi-story homes, paved streets, frescoes, and a sophisticated culture. But beneath the island's beauty lay a ticking time bomb, one of the largest volcanoes in the Mediterranean, the Great Eruption. The eruption of Thera is believed to have been 4 times more powerful than Krakatoa, and nearly 40 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. It ripped apart the island, sending ash and gas miles into the sky, and collapsing the central landmass into a caldera. The explosion generated a colossal tsunami, with waves estimated to reach 100 feet 30 meters or higher. These waves radiated across the Aegean Sea, slamming into the coast of Crete, the Cyclades, and even as far as the eastern Mediterranean. Harbors were destroyed, ships lost, and coastal settlements were wiped out, including vital Minoan trading hubs. Impact on the Minoan civilization. Crete, the heartland of the Minoan Empire, suffered greatly. The tsunami devastated northern coastal cities. Agricultural land was flooded with salt water. Infrastructure, ships, and supply lines were destroyed. The ash cloud darkened skies, disrupting crops and causing famine. Although the Minoan civilization didn't vanish overnight, many historians believe that their eruption and the tsunami that followed fatally weakened their society. Decades later, the Mycenaeans, a rival Greek-speaking civilization, invaded and took control of the weakened Minoans. Thus, a tsunami may have helped shift the balance of power in the ancient world. The Atlantis connection. The tale of Thera has long been linked to the legend of Atlantis, the mythical island described by Plato as a wealthy, advanced civilization that sank into the sea in a single day and night of misfortune, while Atlantis remained unproven. Many scholars believe that the story was inspired by the destruction of Thera. The parallels are striking. A powerful island civilization, advanced architecture and technology, a sudden cataclysmic destruction by water, a collapse remembered only in myth, whether or not Atlantis existed. The story of Thera proves that real civilizations have indeed been destroyed by tsunamis, other ancient tsunami events. Thera wasn't the only ancient tsunami. Here are a few more from history and prehistory. Water wave the Storegga Slide, 200 years ago, off the coast of Norway. A massive undersea landslide known as the Storegga Slide triggered a tsunami that devastated parts of Scotland, Greenland, and northern Europe. Waves were up to 20 meters, 65 feet, high. The coast of what is now England was flooded. Some believe this event helped separate Britain from continental Europe, permanently altering geography. Classical building, the Helike disaster, 373 BCE. The ancient Greek city of Helike was swallowed by the sea overnight, possibly due to an undersea earthquake and tsunami. It remained lost until divers rediscovered its ruins centuries later. Ancient texts describe how a violent sea wave consumed the city, which many believe to be punishment from the gods. Today, Helike is sometimes called the Atlantis of Greece. Snow-capped mountain, Lake Geneva tsunami, 563 CE. Even landlocked areas were not immune. In Switzerland, a rockfall into Lake Geneva caused a tsunami that devastated the lakeside city of Geneva, as documented by historical texts. The lake surged like an inland ocean, killing many and flattening riverside villages. Archaeological evidence. Much of what we know about ancient tsunamis comes from layers of marine sediment found inland, buried city ruins under layers of silt and debris, tree rings showing sudden growth disruptions, ash deposits from volcanic tsunamis. These clues, left behind in mud and stone, allow modern scientists to reconstruct disasters that occurred thousands of years ago, long before any human wrote them down. Legacy and lessons. The ancient tsunamis remind us of three things. They are not a modern phenomenon. These disasters have shaped human history since prehistoric times. Even mighty civilizations can be humbled. The Minoans were once one of the most advanced societies on Earth. Yet, nature brought them to their knees. Stories can outlive science. The myth of Atlantis, the legend of Helike, and the fear of the sea that permeated ancient cultures all reflect real events buried beneath waves and time. Modern researchers now study these ancient events not just to understand the past, but to prepare for the future, because the Earth remembers, and sometimes it repeats itself. Modern warning systems and survivor stories. As tsunamis continue to strike into the 21st century, often with devastating results, humanity began responding not just with grief, but with innovation. While we cannot stop earthquakes, volcanoes, or landslides that cause tsunamis, modern science has developed ways to detect, track, and warn people before disaster hits. This chapter dives into technology that saves lives and the harrowing stories of survivors who lived through the chaos. Globe with Meridian's the birth of tsunami warning systems. After the 1946 Aleutian Island tsunami devastated Hilo, Hawaii, killing over 150 people. The United States created the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, PDWC, in 1949. It was the world's first tsunami alert system, and it would not be the last. Today, several global and regional systems exist. Pacific Tsunami Warning System, PDWS, covers Pacific nations. Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning System, created after the 2004 disaster. NEMTWS, for the Northeast Atlantic, Mediterranean, and connected seas. Caribbean Tsunami Warning Program, CTWP, DART buoys, deep ocean assessment, and reporting of tsunamis, key to real-time detection. These systems combine seismographs, underwater pressure sensors, GPS buoys, and satellite communication to detect abnormal seismic activity and changes in sea level. When signs of tsunami are detected, alerts are issued to governments, broadcasters, and citizens via sirens, SMS, apps, radio, and television. But even with these tools, timely evacuation can be difficult. 3 o'clock, the race against time. Tsunamis move fast. In deep ocean, waves can travel as fast as 800 kilometers per hour, 500 miles per hour. Warning systems must act faster. Underwater sensors detect rapid pressure changes. Data is transmitted in real time to regional warning centers. Algorithms estimate wave size, speed, and direction. Emergency services issue evacuation alerts, often giving coastal areas just minutes to respond. The system is not perfect. In areas close to the epicenter, such as Aceh, Indonesia in 2004, or Sendai, Japan in 2011, tsunamis hit before warnings could be issued. For this reason, education is essential. Many countries have implemented school drills, public signage showing evacuation routes, community sirens, tsunami-safe shelters, water wave stories of survival. Technology can save lives, but so can courage, instinct, and preparation. Here are a few real-life stories of tsunami survivors. Round Pushpin Banda Aceh, Indonesia, 2004. Martunis, a 7-year-old boy, was swept away by the Indian Ocean tsunami. He clung to a mattress for over 21 days, surviving on rainwater and packaged noodles he found in the debris. When found, he was weak, injured, but alive. Martunis later met Cristiano Ronaldo, who sponsored his education. He became a symbol of resilience and hope. Round Pushpin Sendai, Japan, 2011. Miki Endo, a 24-year-old employee of Minamisarika Town Hall, stayed behind to broadcast warnings through the city's loudspeaker system. Her voice echoed through the town as a tsunami approached. Please evacuate to higher ground. A tsunami is coming. She saved hundreds of lives, but lost her own. Her bravery became legendary across Japan. Round Pushpin, Sri Lanka, 2004. Tilly Smith, a 10-year-old British schoolgirl vacationing with her family in Phuket, Thailand, had just learned about tsunamis in school when she noticed the water suddenly pulling back from the shore, a classic tsunami sign. She screamed at her family to run. She alerted resort staff, and the beach was cleared just in time. Her entire resort survived. Round Pushpin, Alaska, 1958. Howard Ulrich and his son were fishing in Latuya Bay when a rock slide triggered a mega tsunami over 500 meters high. Ulrich saw the wave race toward them, taller than anything he'd ever imagined. Somehow, their boat rode the wave, like a cork in a storm, and survived. Ulrich's testimony helped scientists understand mega tsunamis for the first time. Satellite antenna tsunami simulation and AI. In the 21st century, artificial intelligence and supercomputers now help forecast tsunami behavior more accurately than ever. These technologies simulate millions of potential scenarios based on real-time seismic data, improving both speed and precision. Modern innovations include AI-driven early warning apps, high-speed 3D modeling of wave propagation, crowdsourced earthquake detection via smartphones, virtual reality evacuation drills. Scientists can now simulate wave impact on urban environments, helping engineers design better seawalls, safer buildings, and improved evacuation routes. Blue Book lesson from survivors. The voices of those who lived through tsunamis offer powerful guidance. React quickly. If you feel a strong earthquake near the coast, evacuate immediately. Don't wait for a warning. Respect the signs. Sudden withdrawal of the sea, strange animal behavior, or rumbling sounds can be natural alarms. Practice escape. Know where to go and how fast you need to get there. Listen to experience. Stories from elders, oral traditions, and ancient texts often carry wisdom passed down from earlier disasters. Globe showing Europe, Africa, a global responsibility. While wealthier nations have more access to technology, many coastal communities in developing countries still lack adequate warning systems. International efforts are underway to fix this. UNESCO's Tsunami Ready program, the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System, World Bank Disaster Readiness Funding. Ultimately, tsunamis are not just scientific or geological events. They are human tragedies. The more we learn from them, the better we can protect one another. What the future holds, climate, quakes, and the risk ahead. As the world advances deeper into the 21st century, new challenges and uncertainties emerge for communities living in the shadow of tsunamis. From rising sea levels to shifting tectonic plates, nature's forces and human activity combine to create an evolving landscape of risk. This chapter explores how climate change, geological activity, and modern preparedness shape our future in a world vulnerable to the biggest waves on Earth. Thermometer climate change and rising seas. One of the most significant factors increasing tsunami risk today is climate change. As global temperatures rise, so do the oceans. Sea level rise has already increased by about 8 to 9 inches, 21 to 24 centimeters, since 1880, and is expected to accelerate. Higher sea levels mean tsunami waves can travel further inland, causing greater destruction. Coastal erosion weaken coral reefs, and mangrove loss reduce natural barriers that once helped dissipate wave energy. Some low-lying island nations in the Pacific and Indian Oceans are especially vulnerable. For them, a tsunami combined with storm surges and king tides can be catastrophic. High-voltage earthquakes and tectonic shifts. While tsunamis are usually triggered by undersea earthquakes, predicting when and where the next megaquake will strike remains impossible. Scientists monitor fault lines and subduction zones, like the Pacific Ring of Fire, which are hotspots for seismic activity. Large earthquakes continue to reshape the planet's surface and underwater topography, sometimes producing unexpected tsunamis. New fault discoveries in deeper ocean mapping have shown that smaller quakes or underwater landslides can also generate deadly waves. Satellite technology and preparedness. On the bright side, technological progress offers hope. Satellite imaging and seafloor sensors are being deployed worldwide to improve early detection. Machine learning helps forecast tsunami paths and wave heights with increasing accuracy. Communities near the ocean are embracing smart evacuation plans, public education, and resilient infrastructure. Governments and NGOs collaborate internationally to fund research, enhance warning systems, and improve recovery efforts. Water wave megatsunamis and rare risks. The 1958 Lituya Bay event reminds us of the extremely high-impact megatsunamis caused by massive landslides or volcanic collapses. Scientists now watch several sites globally where similar collapses could occur, such as Cumber Vieja volcano on La Palma, Canary Islands, steep coastal fjords in Alaska and Norway. While megatsunamis are rare, their potential global reach could be devastating. Busts in silhouette community and culture. Human response to tsunami risk is not only about science and infrastructure, it's about culture. Indigenous knowledge often includes tsunami warnings passed through generations. Community drills and education programs build resilience and save lives. Art, literature, and memorials honor those lost, keeping awareness alive. These social factors strengthen the bond between people and the ocean. Respect and preparedness can mean the difference between survival and tragedy. Shield challenges ahead. Despite advances, many challenges remain. Expanding warning coverage in remote or impoverished areas. Balancing coastal development with risk mitigation. Addressing psychological trauma and long-term recovery. Climate change impacts may increase frequency and severity of natural disasters. Crystal ball, looking forward. The biggest tsunamis in history have shaped the world physically and culturally. They are reminders of Earth's power and the fragility of human life. Our best defense lies in knowledge, preparation, and global cooperation. As cities grow along coasts and climate change shifts patterns, understanding tsunami history, from ancient legends to modern science, is more vital than ever. By learning from the past and investing in the future, humanity can face the ocean's fury with courage and hope.